Uh, all right. We are 5 lines on the bottom, and the line begins with what she-merumam be'etzem. And you know, I hope that to some extent we will sense what this is about. Tynug atzmi, so to speak. Tynug that comes from within itself, within him, oneself, due to the recognition and the sensing of the reality of one's own reality. Which removes the individual from his entire environment and reveals the essence of his presence. Now we try to put this in perspective. We should not misinterpret. This can be very easily misinterpreted. And that's why we repeat it. Should not have so misinterpreted. And if you do get into that nekuda, it's a phenomenal nekuda. And the first thing is to always remember when you get into these deep elements is that all depth represents the godly presence, not the worldly presence. There's no depth in the worldly presence. Worldly presence is all surface. There's no depth in the table. It's a structure made of little pieces of wood. That is in the nefesh that conceptualized it. And the nefesh that conceptualized it, we say, the nefesh originates the concept, not because we are living in this world and in these circumstances this would add to your comfort. This is not depth. It originates, so to speak, in the reality of this nefesh, in the reality that God has assigned to this nefesh to be. In stark contrast, I should say, to a worldly orientation where one has abundant wealth. So you could say he feels good about his presence in the world. He's taken care of. Anything he wants, he can get. What happens to this person? He goes crazy, doesn't know what he should want. It doesn't provide anything. Because there is no reality in this. This is a means to some kind of an end, and if you don't have an end, you don't have the means is insignificant. This tynug be'atzmusay, it is, as we said, it says within, when he rises into his real self. And when one rises into his real self, he realizes that this is something which comes from a higher source. This is what we're talking about. Because of the, so to speak, the background that we were dealing with, and it's as I said, in stark contrast to what we have been used to thinking. No matter how we explain it, inevitably we'll fall back to that same perspective. Like we've been saying, if the finger heals from a cut and it heals to perfection, what does that represent? The perfection of the finger or the perfection of the nefesh? In other words, this perfection precedes the healing. It isn't that after he heals, he becomes perfect. The finger doesn't even demand this perfection. Where is this, the whole concept of perfection on a much higher level? Beyond the functional, completely. This is what we're talking about when he rises to his essence. Okay, so let's look inside. We can express it and explain it, but this, like we said the other day, this understanding of this is totally dependent on our sense of our own reality. There's no seichel to it. Seichel does not, it cannot possibly, seichel cannot possibly present it. It can only alert to it, it can only point to it. But one has to find it in himself. All right, let's go inside. Okay, the line begins, she-merumam be'etzem. This is 5 lines in the bottom.
Why does it have to be only by a melech? In other words, every person has a neshama that's given to him by the Eibishter. And if he really was in touch with that neshama, he was also could be misinterpret.
Yes. You know what? Let's finish the over here. Good. This tynug is only by one. she-merumam be'etzem. And explain. You'll see in the words itself, it's not exclusively the melech, but I'll explain why the melech is used as an example. Only by someone who's merumam be'etzem, who is in essence merumam, meaning that his personal orientation is on the supreme level. He's looking for the primary truth And this is what enables him. This is what entices him, not the circumstantial. Like I say, wealth does not touch him. And not only that he has an essential remamus, and that oineg is experienced by him at the moment of tachlis of the pinnacle of his remamus, when he's actually experiencing rising up to that remamus, to that truth. As in case of the melech, at the moment of tachlis oremus, of the extreme supremacy that he possesses. Shemisanig, where he is misanig betynug poshut ve'atzmi. He is misanig by the tynug, what's called tynug poshut. Tynug poshut means undefinable tynug. What is it? What is it that touches you? There is nothing touching me. There is nothing that he identifies with. It's the reality itself. Atzmi. Atzmi means that this pshitus is rooted in his own essence, not that he is gaining something from elsewhere. Lei meyeze dover, excuse me, not from some kind of a thing, from something, from an identified element, kiim, only be'etzem reimamus atzmoi. In the very essence of reimamus atzmoi, of the supremacy of himself. The tynug, that in this tynug. Let me stop here because this will conclude the point. Yehuda, your question. Why do we use the melech as an example? And you're right, it is not exclusively in the melech.
I think I know.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because by everybody else, I mean, they are really subject to a lot of limitations, and worldly limitations, and naturally they have to take that into account when they're figuring, when they're thinking about things. Whereas the Melech is really, just by virtue of who he is able to just be focused on his pure ratzon, without having to worry about, like we said many times, without having to worry about how to carry it out, or so therefore by him it's more revealed. It's something that's more accessible.
Right. This is true. But it does not hit, as you say, the nail on the head. There's a story with the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov was collecting money for whatever purpose that he was collecting money. He walked down the street and he walked up to a window to a house of a wealthy person and knocked 3 times and walked away. So the man looked around, chased after him. He said, "What is it? What? I want you to give me such and such. I need such and such."
You chased after the boss?
What?
You chased after the boss?
Yeah. Yes, what? For me, this was enough. This was enough of an effort. Something centrist. I mean, this is enough of an effort. For me to have to involved, knock on somebody's window, not to have what I want, what I need is unconscionable. Knocking on the window 3 times, that was enough of descent of an effort. So therefore, does not capture the principle. What captures the principle? The principle is that the Melech, this is his function. Everyone else can rise to that madrege, but this is not what his function in the world is. This is why we put a crown on the Melech. A Rebbe is a Melech, and he is also in his own Remus. The Rebbe does not consult with him. The Rebbe says what he wants to say. Doesn't put things up to a vote.
Is that what it means, Remus Be'etzem? That's what the Remus Be'etzem?
So again, the misinterpret be'etzem is true not only by a melech.
That's okay.
But to rise up to that point, this is the melech's function. This is the melech's presence. This is what the melech contributes to his country. Like we said, what expresses a melech? A crown. What's a crown? You heard this many times. A crown is nothing. It's a symbol. Why you go to a symbol? Put up a big sign. I'm a melech. Because the of a melech does not have a presence. Only symbolically can you allude to it. Like we said, when you daven Shemoneh Esrei, you stand like a pole. What's that standing a pole? Think, daven, say what? It's a symbol. This is only symbolic. And what is the symbol of? I'm standing in front of the king. Explain what that means to stand in front of the king. I can only explain it symbolically. That's real Rebbe.
I can only explain it symbolically, meaning the symbol says more than the words ever could.
Absolutely. And standing in front of a king exists only when you're in front of the king. There is nothing that explains it. It exists at that point. There's nothing to say about it. What's standing in front of the king is standing in front of the king. That's it. That's what symbolism is about.
Why is that notch important about that only exists when you're standing in front of the king? I realize that Roimamos is something that you can't explain. It's something that's but to understand the Ayin, why are we saying
only the very reality is that Ayin. There are no peripheral things and
it's not described in
no way to
outside.
describe it, no way to put it in perspective.
No presentation.
No presentation. There is no time. It's not bizman or mokim. Put things in cycle. You have to have a spread. You have to have a place where you're describing things.
exactly was your question?
Why this part of has to be only when you're in front of the thing?
Exactly at that time.
That's what I just want to understand.
So then what does it mean that it's beyond time and space? I didn't understand how that was. I'm sorry.
We say that Chokhmah comes in the form of a Borek HaMavrik, of a spark. Tell me, what is a spark?
It's something which lights up other things, but
What?
It's something which lights up other things, but doesn't really have its own existence.
It doesn't have anything in it. It exists while it exists. That's what it means. In the world mind, in the scientific world, what is true? Only that which can be replicated. This cannot be replicated.
So above time and space means like this is a reality, but it's revealed at certain times, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a reality.
Time and space means that time and space provide for this presence. In order to have this cup, you have to have a time, and you have to have a space where to put it, where it should be. It provides for it. This is beyond time and space. It means there's nothing providing for it. Okay.
It seems like standing in front of the king actually is providing for it, no? That time and space is providing for this.
This is not a provider.
So?
This is not a provider. It's like saying, what's the meaning of the word table? Table is a table. Is that a translation?
No.
It doesn't provide for it. It is it. And this is what the Rebbe explained. Let's go a few more words. That's what the Rebbe started. Be'etzem roimus shaloi, in the very essence of his roimus, of his supremacy, of his elevation. The tynug, where in this tynug, even though tynug you would think is some kind of an experience, no. Tynug, in this tynug, who misinterpret yoiser b'ho asma shaloi. He rises even more deeply into his etzem. This is not a gilui. This is not saying what he consists in. On the contrary, he removes himself completely from everything else, from a presence. B'bchinas havdalah b'yoser. In an extreme state of havdalah, of separation from anything else.
You might have thought this is a Gilui. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what we started. The original thing you said, oh, when a person is misaneg, a gilui of oineg is like a gilui without there being a target, a mitzias.
Oh.
And say, but this is not really gilui. Let's put this in simple terms and understand what he said. This is not gilui. Gilui means that something occurs because one is in some kind of a circumstance, some kind of an environment. This is the opposite of circumstance in an environment. Which is beyond circumstance and beyond environment. This is the reality itself. In other words, the way he is in his, prior to being in his original state. One more word. We explained many times the principle of sight. Where in sight there is a marvelous phenomenon. In a simple glance, an instantaneous glance, totally effortlessly, without any effort, without any focus, one observes a whole panorama. And it's a real observation. How does that occur? Like we say all the time, something that is a spread of a mile, you have to accumulate that information by piecemeal. It's not a cumulative of information. And they explain what is the reason. Because in sight, we are seeing not what we see, but the one who is showing it to us. The truth behind it. We are seeing it not because it has a certain effect, but because it has a reality. This is why we see it. This has no time and space. This is the reality. This is beyond. That was explained. This is why sight is of such paramount importance, because it gives a person. This is what puts a person in the real world. Not in an imaginary world. He sees something, he has to project. What does it mean to me? That's not sight. Sight is what connects you to the reality itself. That has no time and no space. As you said, you can see tens of miles at an instant. Clearly, this was not a cumulative knowledge. And we possess that knowledge. You know why? Because we deep down know, and the first being, Motsurishan, we know that there is a reality behind everything that exists. This is why we're able to accept this knowledge. This is what's called Haidorah, as we spoke Shabbos. All right, this is it for this morning. I think I overstayed my welcome, but not too bad. Have a great day. Oh, I just want to announce our grandson, Peretz Mochkin from Montreal.
Then press pound. Disconnected.
Became a chosen, engaged last night.